January 1940. The winter in northern Finland is brutal, dropping to -40 degrees. On a narrow, snowy forest road called Raatteentie, a massive Soviet army is advancing. The 44th Blue Division wants to cut Finland completely in half. The Soviet forces are terrifying on paper. They have nearly 20,000 elite soldiers, 40 heavy tanks, hundreds of artillery pieces, and thousands of trucks. This massive mechanized column stretches along the narrow road for over 30 kilometers. But the Soviet high command made a fatal mistake. Their troops were trained for the flat plains of Ukraine. They have no winter gear, no white camouflage, and no skis. The 1-meter-deep snow on both sides of the road is an impassable wall. Waiting in the dark, frozen forest are the Finns, led by Colonel Hjalmar Siilasvuo. There are only 6,000 of them. They are outnumbered 3-1. They have no tanks, but they have white snowsuits and absolute mastery of skiing. The Finns prepared to use a brilliant tactical strategy known as Motti. In Finnish, it means chopping firewood into small, helpless pieces. The plan is not to fight the 30-kilometer column head-on, but to slice it into isolated pockets.
Moving silently like ghosts through the pitch-black wilderness, elite Finnish ski troops bypass the heavily armed Soviet front line. They use the deep snow as a tactical highway, gliding effortlessly past the frozen enemy. The Finns strike with surgical precision at specific weak points along the 30-kilometer convoy. They target vital supply trucks, communication lines, and field kitchens before melting instantly back into the dark forest shadows. Within days, the brilliant Finnish strategy yields devastating results. Using explosives and felled trees, small Finnish squads blow up bridges and block the road at multiple key locations. The massive 30-kilometer Soviet column is successfully sliced into several isolated pockets, known as Mottis. The 20,000 men of the elite Blue Division are no longer a unified, unstoppable army. They are now terrified, disconnected groups cut off from help. The psychological impact on the Soviet soldiers is immediate and terrifying. The endless silent forest seems alive with invisible snipers. Every time a freezing Soviet soldier tries to build a campfire to survive the brutal -40-degree frost, the light instantly attracts deadly accurate Finnish sniper fire. Trapped on the open road without shelter, running out of fuel, and starving in the dark, the elite division begins to freeze to death. Inside the isolated Mottis, the Soviet commanders order their men to dig in. They encircle their heavy tanks and trucks to form defensive walls of steel and ice. Despite their hunger and frostbite, the Soviet soldiers fight with immense bravery, refusing to surrender. Their heavy machine guns and artillery fire blindly into the surrounding trees, desperately trying to keep the invisible Finnish ski attackers from closing in on them. Colonel Siilasvuo knows that time is on his side, but he must act before Soviet reinforcements arrive from the east. The Finns bring up their few light mortars and start pounding the smaller Mottis one by one. Finnish submachine gunners, armed with the legendary Suomi KP-31, launch lightning-fast night raids. They eliminate guard posts, destroy supply tents, and slowly shrink the borders of the trapped Soviet pockets. By the cold morning of January 5th, the situation inside the Soviet Mottis turns into an absolute nightmare. The soldiers have been without hot food for days because the Finns systematically destroyed their field kitchens. The severe frostbite turns limbs black, and thousands of men are too weak to even hold their rifles. Without fuel, the massive tanks become nothing more than useless, frozen metal boxes, turning into tombs for the soldiers hiding inside. The Soviet High Command realizes the grave danger and desperately tries to send reinforcements from the eastern border to save the trapped 44th Division. However, the Finns are prepared for this. Small but fiercely determined Finnish blocking detachments hold their ground against overwhelming numbers. They stop the rescue forces just a few kilometers away, ensuring that the trapped Blue Division remains completely isolated in the frozen wilderness. With the enemy exhausted, starving, and cut off from any outside help, Colonel Siilasvuo decides that the time has come to deliver the final, decisive blow. On the night of January 6th, the entire Finnish force is ordered to launch a massive, coordinated assault along the Raatteentie road. The objective is clear and uncompromising: to completely liquidate the remaining Mottis and destroy the elite Soviet division once and for all. The final assault begins with a deafening roar as the few Finnish artillery pieces open fire on the main Soviet strongpoints. Then, through the dense white smoke and heavy snowstorm, thousands of Finnish soldiers charge forward on their skis. They shout fierce battle cries that echo through the dark woods. The surprise is complete, and panic spreads like wildfire through the freezing, exhausted ranks of the desperate Soviet defenders. The battle lines dissolve into brutal, close-quarters combat amidst the stalled trucks and tanks. Armed with swarmy submachine guns, knives, and hand grenades, the highly mobile Finnish squads clear out the trenches and ice bunkers one by one. The Soviet defense begins to shatter completely under the pressure. Soldiers break formation and flee blindly into the deep snowdrifts, only to be swallowed by the freezing wilderness and the dark forests. As the defense collapses, the Soviet commander, General Alexei Vinogradov, realizes the battle is lost. Instead of standing with his men, he makes a desperate decision to save his own life. He orders his staff to retreat and flees the battlefield in a tank, leaving thousands of his wounded and starving soldiers behind to face the Finns. This complete betrayal completely shatters the last remaining morale of the trapped Red Army troops. By January 7th, the organized Soviet resistance on Raatteentie is officially broken. Small, isolated groups of soldiers try to fight to the bitter end near the eastern border, but they are quickly overwhelmed by the relentless Finnish ski patrols. The road that was once a proud symbol of Soviet military might has now turned into a 30-kilometer-long graveyard of frozen bodies, burning vehicles, and scattered military equipment. The final numbers of the battle are shocking and showcase the scale of the victory. Historians estimate that between 7,000 and 9,000 Soviet soldiers lost their lives on Raatteentie, freezing to death or killed in action. Over 1,200 were taken as prisoners of war. In stark contrast, the Finnish forces suffered around 400 dead and 600 wounded. The highly outnumbered Finns had completely wiped out an elite Soviet division. The victory provided the poorly equipped Finnish army with an unbelievable mountain of war booty. The Finns captured 43 functional tanks, 70 heavy artillery guns, nearly 300 machine guns, 6,000 rifles, and 300 trucks. They also found thousands of horses and critical communication equipment. This massive haul of modern weaponry was immediately sent to the front lines to help the Finnish army fight in the remaining weeks of the war. For the Soviets, the defeat was a humiliation that could not be hidden. General Vinogradov managed to escape back across the border to the Soviet Union, but he did not find safety. The Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin was furious about the loss of an entire division. Vinogradov was put on a swift military trial for cowardice and incompetence. He was found guilty and executed by a firing squad in front of his surviving soldiers. News of the miracle at Raatteentie spread like a massive shockwave across the entire globe. International journalists rushed to the frozen forests of Suomussalmi to photograph the endless lines of captured Soviet tanks and equipment. The world was stunned to see how a tiny nation could humiliate a global superpower. The victory proved to the Western countries that Finland was not only willing to fight, but highly capable of winning. Today, the Battle of Raatteentie is studied in elite military academies worldwide as the ultimate masterclass in asymmetrical warfare. It proved that a smaller force can defeat a technologically superior army by using the environment as a weapon. The combination of high mobility on skis, deep winter survival skills, and the clever Motti tactic turned the harsh Finnish nature into the ultimate defender against a massive invading force. Behind the brilliant strategic victory lies a deep human tragedy. Most of the Soviet soldiers sent to Raatteentie were young men from warm climate regions, completely left to freeze to death by their own careless leaders. Today, the Raatteentie Memorial stands on the former battlefield. It features thousands of large stones spread across a field, each one representing a soldier who lost his life in the freezing snow of the forest. The victory at Raatteentie came to define the famous winter war spirit of the Finnish people. It showed that when a nation stands completely united in the face of existential danger, even the most impossible odds can be overcome. The bravery of the 6,000 Finnish soldiers who stood on that narrow road saved their country from total occupation and guaranteed that the independent nation of Finland would survive the storm. More than 80 years later, the snow still falls quietly over the Raatteentie road, but the echoes of January 1940 will never be forgotten. It remains a timeless symbol of courage, brilliant tactics, and the ultimate sacrifice for freedom. The giant was defeated in the white hell of the forest, and the legend of the white ghosts on skis lives on forever. Thank you for watching this incredible piece of military history.